From the report this year, we are very interested to see that there is a trend that the gap between China and other BRIC countries are widening. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us why was that?
Well, it seems to be because of the very effective macroeconomic management of China in the last few years, mm-hmm. plus continued investment in improving the institutions and the infrastructure of China. Mm-hmm. So the financial systems are continuing to strengthen, mm-hmm. Business is seen as increasingly sophisticated, mm-hmm. and infrastructure is continuing to improve. Mm-hmm. And so many of the other BRIC countries have also improved over the last few years, but China's rate of improvement is faster than the others.
Just faster?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are these things that China has done much better than other BRIC countries, in your opinion?
Well, certainly one of the areas of significant comparative improvement has been in infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
I mean, there's clearly this is a place where China has been able to outperform countries such as India, mm-hmm. In a very consistent fashion for the last decade or more.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So China's ranking rised about 2 during the past 1 year. So what are the major driving forces behind this rising?
Well, there's been two phenomena over the last year. One is China's financial system has mm-hmm. continued to have improved. Secondly, a number of other countries' absolute position declined. A particular macroeconomic mm-hmm. situation in terms of growth, mm-hmm. trade balances, mm-hmm. budget balances. Mm-hmm. And so China not only improved in an absolute sense, it improved compared to others as others declined a little bit.
I see. Things this year, the labor costs in China's east coast regions have risen significantly. Do you think that will impact China's long-term competitiveness?
Well, it actually fits with China moving up the competitiveness value chain. Mm-hmm. That as China becomes increasingly sophisticated, it won't just be competing on price mm-hmm. Or cost factors. It'll be increasingly competing based on efficiency mm-hmm. and on product innovation. Mm-hmm. So, in a sense, the increase in labor costs is a reflection of where China's competitive position is. Mm-hmm. And if China continues to improve its competitiveness, mm-hmm. it should be able to accommodate increased labor costs mm-hmm. while continuing to be very competitive on a global level.
The Chinese government is trying to do that. What's your perspective on their efforts?
Well, it's probably appropriate, given China's stage in development, mm-hmm. as it moves from competing on price to competing on quality and competing on innovation. Mm-hmm. You would expect an increasingly productive and increasingly educated workforce mm-hmm. also be able to receive the salaries mm-hmm. appropriate for that. And the message is, though, that the nature of competitiveness success in the future for China mm-hmm. can't be the same as it was 5 or 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think are the major obstacles that prevent China from transferring from an efficiency-driving country to an innovation-driving country?
Well, I think what will be important is to continue to improve the more sophisticated parts of the mm-hmm. economy, the education system, the climate for innovation, mm-hmm. protection of property or of intellectual property, mm-hmm. while at the same time continuing to improve the basics, mm-hmm. Particularly in terms of infrastructure and institutions. Mm-hmm. And because of the pace of China's changes, mm-hmm. it needs to do these both at the same time. Mm-hmm. But based on historical experience, China's probably well capable of doing that.
And how long do you think this process will be?
To move into an innovation-driven, it would still be a process of many years. This may be the challenge of the next decade or 2 decades mm-hmm. to move from a fact-driven in what we call a stage 1 mm-hmm. through the stage 2 of efficiency-driven and into stage 3 of innovation-driven. Mm-hmm. That's still a multi-year process. Mm-hmm. the interesting opportunity is, will China be able to do that more rapidly than other developing countries have historically?
You just said that the improvement in China's financial system has driven China's rankings during the past 1 year. But also the access to proper financing is one of the most problematic factors that company express themselves in China. Well, why? What do you think this?
Well, so it suggests that, like with so many of these issues, it shows that there's an improvement, but the situation is not yet ideal. So there's still room to improve, which is both a challenge but also an opportunity. Because it does show that while China's done very well, it has the opportunity to become even more competitive.
And also, I see that policy instability is also the second biggest concern for many companies in China. But to people's experience, that China have a reputation of a stable policy. Can you explain more about this? I mean, in the long term, this policy is stable?
I think there has been historically quite a bit of policy stability. This qualitative assessment, as part of our survey, suggests that there are still some questions in people's minds. But for the details, I wouldn't be able to give you more detail than that.
I see. Can you share with us some of your perspective on the world economic this year and next year? Do you feel there is a double dip?
I think it's clear that there is a period of heightened uncertainty. And it's worth remembering we've never gone through this situation before. This has been the worst downturn since the Great Depression. We've avoided the excesses of the Great Depression, but we are truly in uncharted waters. So it will require a degree of ongoing cooperation and collaboration between different governments and between business and government for us to move through this successfully. One challenge is it's much easier to coordinate actions during a crisis than it is in the still very important post-crisis period. So if we wish to avoid a future dip or a future crisis, we need to maintain that same spirit of collaboration and cooperation between countries and between sectors that we had while we were in the middle of the crisis. And that's a big challenge, but that's also one of the reasons why the World Economic Forum exists, to try to bring these people together. And that will certainly be one of the goals of what we're doing in Summer Davos next week.
Do you think there will be a second round of stimulus move across the world after the U.S. President Obama has announced a new stimulus package?
There may be some focused areas, but clearly countries don't have the fiscal room they had 2 or 3 years ago to use just fiscal stimulus. So I think instead of broad stimulus, it would have to be very smart and focused stimulus, and particularly stimulus that help trigger further investment by the private sector.
What's your perspective on China's economic growth? Some analysts said that China's GDP growth may slow a little bit. Do you agree with that?
No, we don't see any signs of a fundamental change. In fact, what the Competitiveness Report suggests is not only the quantity of the growth impressive, but the quality of the growth is also very impressive. And it's the constant improvement in China's competitiveness that give one confidence that the growth will continue into the future.
I also noticed that the first few top rankers in this rank are all small countries. Can you explain why was that?
Well, it's interesting that size doesn't seem to be the major determinant of competitiveness. That small economies that are open and therefore can enjoy global economies of scale can compete effectively with the large economies. What these economies seem to have in common is very strong institutions, very sophisticated businesses, and a trust-based society that is able to come together and address economic or social challenges successfully. That they're actually very flexible, whether Sweden's having to deal with its debt crisis 10 years ago, Switzerland's continuing to adjust to economic changes, or Singapore's constant economic evolution. They're all very flexible societies.